Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Joe Naz podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of having a friend that I've known since the age of high school, Loureen Ayyoub. She is a journalist, and she is such an inspiration. Her journey is a wild journey where she's overcome so much adversity and really has this opportunity to bring light to the most beautiful stories. And she investigates these stories. She brings forth the brutal facts, and she's able to express herself and share individuals on a way that they might not be seen before. We really dive in today and we learn about the wild journey that she's been on. We learn about her poetry. We learn about her humanitarian efforts. And I feel super blessed to resonate with her in this conversation because we were able to talk about so many subjects that we felt very similarly on. Please listen in. You're going to really enjoy this. And then also, if you can, please like, comment, and follow this podcast. We'd appreciate it. And if you find a friend that might benefit from this conversation, we'd really appreciate you sharing it with them. So please tune in. This is going to be a great journey. I'm excited to take you guys with us. Today, we have one of my oldest friends, somebody that I've known we've known each other since high school at least, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we grew up together. We have a lot of family friends together, and we've known each other for many moons. And recently, I've just had the pleasure of watching you blossom into this amazing, beautiful, just like woman who's leading so many people and inspiring so many others. And it's really been amazing to watch your journey and to see you just, bloom into this amazing flower that's just shining on so many other people around you.
Aw,
And
thank you,
so,
Georgia.
yeah.
Don't make me cry. It's too
Yeah.
early. We just started.
Yeah, it's nice to watch people coming into their own, and I just feel like you're really at that point in your life where you're really owning who you are, and you're doing an amazing job of inspiring everyone around you.
Thank you, Jojo. I appreciate every word, and you're absolutely right. We go way back, and so sometimes it's nice to reconnect with people you grew up with because it kind of gives you that context of like, hey, this is where I was at. These were the goals we discussed as kids, and now look at us, all of us, both you and I, finding our way and pursuing what is authentic to ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. So, for those of you that don't know Loureen Ayyoub, she is an amazing individual, and I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction so you can learn the layers of who she is as an individual. So Loureen Ayyoub is a Jordanian-American journalist, artist, and filmmaker. She is a broadcast media presenter that has had her stories featured on ABC, CNN, and Spectrum News, and she is also a spoken word poet, presenting poetry in places like the United Nations, the National Press Club, and more. Her poetry has evolved into several music projects, and she continues to work as a lyricist as well. She received her BA from Pepperdine University studying intercultural communications and then moved on to receive her master's in international relations. Loureen is the founder of a production company called The Global Human, where the stories that unify people are celebrated, and she has worked on many humanitarian initiatives locally and internationally, and is a bridge builder using media and the arts as a tool for healing and reconciliation. So there's a lot to break apart there, and I'm excited to dive into each one of these topics and really hear about your journey, because it's been, from my understanding, it was not always easy. You've had to work very hard to get where you are today, to receive the recognition for all the hard work that you've put in. And so I guess just asking you, where do you think in your journey should we start to explain to people how you got here today?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, thank you for that intro and just the kind words. And it's humbling, to look back. And yeah, at the same time, we stand here knowing that there's so much more to do. So looking back, I mean, I would say, where did it start? I think it started with just being courageous enough to know what you want. And I think oftentimes, especially, in more traditional cultures,
Yep.
It can be challenging to just be real about, hey, I might want to pursue a career path that is not exactly reflective of what everybody else does. And it might be considered a little,
Edgy.
rebellious or edgy. Yeah. Even though it's funny enough, it's really not that rebellious, all things
Yeah.
considered with what's rebellious these days.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think that's the starting point for me, at least. It was like, hey, I come from a more conservative cultural background and I want to do something a little more creative.
Yeah.
How do I do that and just be real about it? And it started with me just being real about saying it out loud. This is who I am. And you remember this as a kid. Like,
Yeah.
maybe
100%.
you can think back of those days where we would
Yeah.
discuss like, hey,
Yeah,
this
because
is
we're
what we
both
see.
Jordanian, so we both have the same culture. Our moms are Jordanian, and so we grew up in a very similar culture. And I know for me, just as a kid, it was just like subconsciously ingrained, not subconsciously, very consciously
Yes, yes.
ingrained. Lawyer,
Very clear.
attorney, or
Yes.
lawyer or doctor, lawyer, doctor. And so
Or pharmacist if you
yeah,
want to,
yeah. If you want to
be a little
stray a
edgy.
little bit,
Yeah.
be a little bit off the beaten path,
Yeah.
but definitely journalism and those types of topics. I'm sure that it was probably a little bit frustrating for your parents, and I don't know if they fought you and pushed back. But at the end of the day, it's a very admirable job, and you get to bring to light. You get to bring light to so many stories that before might not have had some light upon them.
Yeah, yeah. I think it could be looked at as risque if one doesn't fully understand like the opportunity, like you said, to really shed light on things that are important and to do it well. Because I think oftentimes we generalize certain worlds like, hey, media, it's dangerous. You're gonna lose yourself, you're gonna lose your identity.
Yeah,
But like you said, if you go in with anything you do in life, whether you're a lawyer or a journalist, if you
Yeah.
go in with a purpose and an intention, you can make positive impacts. So
Yeah.
I always knew for me, like, hey, I don't want to just do this just to be on TV. I want to
Yeah.
do this because there are real things that are not being presented
yeah.
and there are real people who are not being presented that deserve it.
Yeah, I have some heavy questions right off the bat. My question for you is like when you're in these positions, right? On a podcast, I can pretty much go anywhere and discuss anything and share my opinion. When
Right.
you're interviewing these individuals and you're having these moments, how much are you allowed to express yourself, ask questions that you want to ask, or is it like, here's the prompt, you have to read this, do not stray. These are the questions that were posed to them before. We have to stay on script.
I think it depends on the assignment, depends on the network you're working with, it depends on the story you're telling, the show you're on, and there's so many different contexts and layers. Answer your question. I think that more hard news journalism, it is important to stay focused on the facts because you just want to deliver the information without too much bias or influence. But there's some conversations where I think it is good and healthy to make things more relatable, make things more human. Not only does that help the subject open up, it makes the whole story feel more authentic because it's like you're not talking to robots. You're not a robot.
Yeah.
And I think we are seeing a shift in media right now with folks like yourself, getting out there and showing people that, hey, people are layered, stories are layered, and it's okay to have a little more interpersonal connection. But it's a fine line. It's a balance,
Of course.
All depends on context.
Got it. Okay. I'm glad to hear that it kind of just really depends on the job and it depends on what you're trying to get across in that message.
Yeah.
So being so passionate about journalism, what are the topics that you're most passionate about? And when you're very passionate about something, do you ask for freedom to be able to like express yourself and to be able to kind of elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah. So, the topics I love, it evolves constantly. So for example, I've been covering boxing for several years. It's a world I never thought I
Did
would
you
be
just get
covering.
thrown into that?
It started with me just getting thrown
Yeah.
into it. One day there was a breaking news story that I
Yeah.
ended up covering, and all of a sudden I got immersed into this world, into this sport, and I fell in love with it because I
Yeah.
just saw so many real stories connected to that sport. So I never like to limit myself, but I think the topics I love are just the ones where I can, art and culture generally, like everyone kind of has a beat or a niche. For me,
Yeah.
art and culture, a little bit of lifestyle, those are the worlds that I thrive in as a storyteller.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that, I'm afraid to tackle necessarily. Even politics, there's ways to approach political stories in a more authentic way when you really get to know the person behind the politics or the person behind the headline. So I enjoy tackling anything that allows me to tackle it from a more personal, character-driven approach versus just the numbers and the headlines, because that's how you give context to a person in a story. Things might be a certain way, but why? Let's dig deeper and go behind the scenes to the person.
Got it. So where you can almost humanize a story and bring more light to something that might not be shown before. But when it came to the boxing, have you done a lot of sports stuff before? Did you just like have
I
an
did a
opportunity?
little bit of basketball and soccer, just
Yeah.
a few general things, nothing too deep. But with boxing, it wasn't covered much. Obviously, soccer, basketball, like
Yeah.
you've got a bunch of people already covering that. Boxing is a world where there are a lot of amazing reporters in the boxing scene, but not every mainstream news agency is focusing on that sport these days. So I had a chance to really dig deeper and build these beautiful relationships in that world. And, as they say, boxing is the poor man's sport. And I love that because it just shows you that people who are risking their life taking on a sport
Yeah.
like boxing, they're doing it because they just have this love for the sport and they almost have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And although, people can argue that it's a more rigged world because the rules aren't as black and white as other sports. But at the end of the day, you're encountering some really fascinating people who are who've overcome so much and they just love what they do. So that's been fun.
Yeah, I remember seeing one of your videos online. You traveled pretty far for one of the boxing matches. It was the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How was that?
That was a wild experience and definitely one for the books for me.
Yeah.
I had been covering a boxer. His name is Andy Ruiz. He was the first ever Mexican-American to win the heavyweight championship of the world. And it was a big deal for the Mexican community and really anyone who loves the sport of boxing because they dubbed him the Mexican Rocky, because he was just the underdog in every way. And I had been covering him locally, and then I was asked suddenly, like, hey, did you hear there's a rematch and it's taking place in Saudi Arabia? I was like, oh, wow, very cool. Hope they have, best of luck to them.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, yeah, well, you're going. I was like, excuse me, you're going. And at the time, see, Saudi Arabia now, they're doing so many wonderful things with sports and the arts, and they're really opening their doors in a new way. At this time, it was like unprecedented. I think even when I had applied for the visa, it was the first time they even created a visa for visiting versus like a visa just to do like the Mecca pilgrimage.
Yeah.
So it was an unprecedented time in the sense of the kingdom of Saudi Arabia opening its doors in a new way.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm not going to lie. I had my own biases. I was like, hey, I'm a woman. I don't know if they're open-minded yet. But I went and all my biases went down the drain because I felt safe. Although there are different cultural norms there, I still felt like, hey, I'm being accepted and received. And I'm, looking past what the stereotypes are and just seeing people for who they are.
Yeah.
And then just to see the way that the sports world and the arts world is being embraced out there, I think it's awesome. I think Saudi Arabia is a really cool place it's a place to keep an eye on. There's going to be a lot happening there in the future in terms of the arts and sports. So it was fun to be a part of that. But even more fun to like go and cover a sport like that, cover such an iconic match. And it was crazy in every way. I don't even know where to start with how crazy it was, but it was crazy.
Yeah. Do you get like front row seats to this when you're reporting on it, and so you're like up there in the mix?
Yeah, it kind of depends on your media pass and all the things. There's so many complications to that, but I was definitely blessed to have full access because I was doing a lot of coverage, on every side, and so that was wild. I actually remember one of the nights. The princes of Saudi Arabia really wanted like an authentic Mexican taco night.
Yeah.
And and so because they had these, proud Mexican boxers, the prince wanted his authentic Mexican tacos, and actually they didn't have the tortillas in Saudi Arabia that we have here in Cali.
Of course.
So they had asked us because I was going with the team at the time. I was working with one of the managers, like embedded to get coverage from different angles. They had asked us to bring tortillas. So we may or may not have smuggled tortillas into Saudi Arabia. It's all good now. It's all kosher and halal because everyone ate it and everyone's safe. But we got those lovely tacos on that taco night. And it was such a crazy moment because, as an Arab American journalist, I've also been very connected to and passionate about the Latino community. I've always felt connected to them, being born and raised out here in SoCal. I also speak Spanish. So there was a moment that evening with the Mexican boxing team and the Arabian princes where they were going back and forth talking, but there was such a huge language barrier.
Yeah.
And I ended up becoming the translator from Arabic into Spanish.
That's awesome.
And Spanish into Arabic. And then in that moment, I realized, man, this is exactly what I love about media. You're truly a bridge. And I felt it through those Mexican tacos that night in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. And also just so wild that the journey you'd been on in your life brought you to this exact moment where you could be a bridge, where you knew Spanish and you knew Arabic well enough to be able to translate both of those for them, right?
Yeah. And, it's funny enough, like some of the folks there from the Latino community may have thought like, hey, you're one of those Saudi princesses. And then on the other side, the Saudi folks thought were like, well, she's one of the Mexican cousins with them. So I was just blending. And that's the beauty of being a journalist. You blend in everywhere and you just deliver, hopefully, good news, when you do your job well. Yeah.
How rad. What was it like hanging out with the Saudi princes? Were they like bougie? Were they cool? Were they down to earth? Actually, I don't know if you can even comment, but I'm just wondering.
Everything was perfect. No issues. Thank you, Lord. No, the truth is, they were so hospitable, so kind. And, their whole goal was to show people like, hey, there are these preconceived notions about our region, but the reality is like we're just like me and you. We love sports and we love good Mexican tacos, you know? And so, like I said, I mean, it even broke my own barriers of like, hey, people have just different views and fears and misconceptions. And I think, it's a beautiful thing to just see people come together through the love of sport, through the love of food, whatever it is, and that's the beauty of covering those topics because it brings people together.
Yeah. It's funny when you talk about the tortilla thing. I have one of my best friends from college as my roommate. He went to Pakistan.
I really hope I don't get in trouble for the smuggling tortilla thing.
That's funny.
We say it now and then we're like, no, yeah. It was, go on.
No, you're fine. He said the hardest part was getting the tortillas to be the same consistency as what they had in California. That was like his biggest struggle was making the tortillas similar.
In Pakistan?
Pakistan. He said he just couldn't figure it out. That's what took him months to figure out was making the tortillas similar. So just that triggered in my mind when you were talking about it.
I'm telling you, that authentic maize.
Yeah, it's the real deal.
Yeah.
It's the real deal. So being a journalist, it sounds like essentially you're investigating topics and you get a chance to really dive deep on all kinds of different things. And what do you think are some of the biggest skills that you've learned from journalism, and how is that like translated into your normal everyday life?
Let's see. Well, one of the main things is listen before you speak. I think we're in like a social media driven world where everyone wants to comment, everyone wants to say something, and we have such a limited attention span. We make our judgments and we keep swiping. And I think the beauty of journalism when done well is you're really present and you really have to listen. So that has helped me be more present and give things deeper thought, whether it's a story or interpersonal scenario, just making sure to listen. Another thing would be understanding the balance of that there's always two sides of the story, regardless of, people's perspectives, every side is worth being explored. And I think you can take that not just from journalism, but also in interpersonal life matters, like always be willing to look at each side, even if you inherently disagree with it. Yeah. Maybe those are a few things.
No, I agree with both those things. I was just talking about them on the last podcast that I just had right now, like literally just listening with 2 ears and speaking with one mouth, and allowing people to actually finish with their thoughts and get it all out is extremely important. And also just understanding that everybody has a story. And even though you might think it's going to be the same story, they can have a different twist or a different perspective on it. And more importantly, it's just energetically, it's going to be different, and just allowing for the story to unfold and allowing them to finish what they need to get out. And so these are great skills that you've learned. And these are also skills that I've just learned from podcasting too. And I guess this is kind of a form of journalism in a way too. Mm-hmm. And it's been beautiful to learn these skills because they've translated to every aspect of my life. And so even in being an attorney, I've learned to listen so much more in-depthly, to listen so much more intently, to hold space in a much more effective way, and to be patient, and to allow people to just get out what they need and to unfold whatever that pace looks like. And so I'm glad to hear that you've learned similar things through your journey, because this is essentially journalism in a way, and letting people tell their story and to share their news. And so it's really cool to watch this unfold too.
Right. Yeah. No. And in some ways, journalists and attorneys definitely have some things in common. One, we're looking for the truth. Yeah. Two, we're looking for evidence. Yeah. Three, and this should be done, more often than not, but really be willing to ask those tough questions, those uncomfortable questions, and to always go there, dig a little bit deeper. And so probably that's one of my favorite things in the realm of media and journalism is that there's no such thing as a weird question, stupid question, far off question. Just to me, I've always been a question asker since I was a kid.
Yep.
Sometimes for better or for worse,
100%. I was just getting so much trouble. People like, we just asked them, like, but I didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't
just,
understand.
Like,
Explain it from that angle because I don't get it.
Yeah, but and also too, like you were saying, like we're also looking for the cold hard facts.
Yeah.
And also trying to decipher that there might be 10 people in a scenario and every person has a different story, and then it's our job to figure out what are the cold hard facts, right?
Right.
So all of these things are skill sets that translate both ways. And so, yeah, our jobs are very similar in that way, and we're all trying to get down to the truth, and then that can even be subjective when you look at it that way, and just asking yourself what is the truth. And I think a lot of times it's what feels like is the truth, and you kind of have to follow your intuition that will lead you to the best answer and the best outcome.
Right, 100%. Intuition's a big part of it. And then sometimes another part of it is understanding that although we try to put things in black and white, the truth is oftentimes it's always going to be somewhere in the middle. Truth can be nuanced. Truth can be layered. Truth can be complex.
Yeah.
And, being okay with the gray area and not feeling like you failed, but feeling like, hey, there is a reality in which perhaps they're both right and perhaps they're both wrong.
Yeah.
But the gray area, like you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. I wrote my college entrance speeches on that topic, which is there's a quote, which is there's not just wisdom in seeing the black and the whites, but also understanding the grays. And it's just making sure that you're not just looking at things from two ways. There's so many different other things that can be in between it all. So I resonate with that on a very deep level.
Totally.
That quote changed my life. Yeah.
And, gray hair represents wisdom, right? So, hey, maybe that color has a little significance.
100%. I feel that. I got all my silver fox hairs on my beard coming in. Thank God they're not in my hair too much yet.
Lucky you as a man. Women are like, distinguished, wise gentleman.
Yes, so much
a woman has one. It's like, you old lady.
Gotta pluck that out.
Yeah.
It's gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So getting to this position where you are now, it's obviously not been an easy road. What are some of the struggles that you faced getting to where you are? Because, I see you now. I obviously don't know like what I would consider like so much more of a successful journalist versus other journalists. I think it would probably be in correlation to the recognition of fame that you have perchance, right? And so where you are now, like what were some of the struggles that it took to get where you are now, and where you've had success in these news stations?
There's been many challenges along the way. Oftentimes it's really, are you willing to believe in yourself when others maybe won't or don't?
Are you in a really competitive field? Is there a lot of people gunning for your positions?
Yes, definitely. It's a challenging industry.
Yeah.
I'm glad it exists. But yeah, oftentimes it's highly sought after. Again, sometimes for those more superficial reasons of like, hey, the glamour, the fame, but there is nothing glamorous about journalism. I'll just tell you that from now.
Yeah.
Because what you're really doing is you're getting your hands dirty in every way possible. You're filming, you're editing, you're producing, you're reporting. Sometimes when you have the luxury of a beautiful team, you got that support. But oftentimes when you're out there just jumping into it and getting the assignment, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty. So I want to definitely dispel that perception of media that it's just this glamorous thing.
Yeah, because you also work so many hours just for a short story. Like you'll spend
and like a 10-second live shot.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like you'll spend hundreds of hours working on something, and then 10 seconds. That was the entire
then
story.
It's done. You're like, all right, time to finally get some breakfast.
Shit.
It's wild, I mean, the things you see in the movies is kind of true to an extent, in the sense of like, it's such a high and low roller coaster, but this is why you have to be super passionate about it, because it's definitely not for the money. And if you think it's going to be for the fame, that'll go away very quickly because there's no amount of recognition that will fulfill a soul that is just not content from within.
Yeah.
I think it's just, it's about, understanding your purpose in it. And I want to circle back to what you just asked. Make sure, can you readdress that question again?
Yeah, the
So I'm
question
sure I
was,
hit it.
what were the struggles that
Yeah.
you went through to get to this point? I was going to circle back. I was just
Thank
letting you
you.
finish the thought.
Thank
Don't
you.
worry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The challenges. Yes, there's many. Let's see here. So, yeah, I was addressing the question you had asked, which was, is it competitive and all that? Yes, it is. And oftentimes there are people who, have a perception of that world. And yeah, there's that. But yeah, my challenges in getting into it is one, believing in myself. No one's really done this in my family or my world. I was the first person in my family to even get a college degree. So I had to really push as a first generation American, let alone first generation graduate, to teach myself the things that didn't really come naturally, didn't have resources around me that, empowered me to find the path directly. I had to take a very non-linear path, left and right, seeking advice left and right. And so, there was many challenges along the way. One, just believing in myself that I could do it. Two, dealing with a lot of rejection. There's been so much rejection along the way. People often see just the wins and the victories on the outside, but there's a lot of no's before you get your yes. And then when you get the right yes, because you may get multiple yeses, oftentimes it's not about what you say yes to, it's also about what you say no to. And you learn that along the way, being selective with the right path that you choose. But those challenges look like believing in yourself, not being discouraged when people say no. And again, because it is such a front-facing sort of job, you have to not, you have to have thicker skin when it comes to even just visually, because it's a visual job. So people will judge you by your appearance. People will judge you by, every little thing. It's funny because even as a kid, I always felt like I had a deeper voice, like a guyish voice.
Yeah.
And I remember when my uncles would call the house, they'd be like, Ricky, put your dad on the phone. I'm like, it's not Ricky, it's Loureen, okay? Ricky's my little brother. And I'd just be so upset because I'm like, gosh, I have this deep, raspy voice, man. And it's funny because I do believe that God uses all the things that you think are so imperfect about you and channels it to be something beautiful if you're just willing to embrace who you are. Yeah. And so, funny enough, I've been complimented often about my voice, the style of my voice, the cadence of my voice. And I was like, wow, to think I used to hate my voice. And,
because I never thought about what you thought about your voice until you pointed it out. Right
You're now I hear that raspy voice.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing about most of our insecurities. The rest of the world doesn't see it, but we see it the most. And we also are our worst critic, and so we're judging ourselves the most.
Totally.
So I completely understand, and I feel that. But that's also part of the journey is you can look at it one of two ways. You can either let it crush you or you can let it raise you up, right? So it can either be a weakness or it can be a superpower. It's up to you how you want to frame and you want to reference it. So it's good that you were able to turn it into a superpower instead of being something that you're super insecure about all the time.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's, it's all about perspective at the end of the day.
Yeah. Because, when you just started describing the things that you like about it, those are the things that I like about your voice, too. You have a cadence. You have a very, it's like a demeanor with it, where if your voice was a lighter, let's say, a more high-pitched voice, I wouldn't think that it would have the weight and the seriousness of it. So I actually think your voice for reporting is more effective because you don't have that other type of voice. So that would be my 2 cents, just from an outside perspective, if that helps.
Well, thank you for your 2 cents.
Yeah, no
I take it as 200 cents.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Here for dad jokes all day. Man. Yeah. So those are some of the challenges, believing in yourself, looking past the critics. And that's one of many negative voices. There was a lot of negative voices. Could be from within, it could be from the outside, but learning to overcome that and just, it takes so much self-love and so much just being grounded within yourself to be able to pour into others, because it's a job that requires not only comfort with yourself, but you're pouring into others constantly. You're using your expression in such a way to not just inform people, entertain people, give people perspective on things. So you need a sense of just groundedness within. And I definitely attribute that to my faith journey with God and that self-love that's so important to have no matter where you're at in life.
Yeah, and I mean, also a part of your job, I can imagine, is making people feel comfortable enough where they're willing to share their story, because you're not asking people the small talk, you're asking people the heavy shit. And to ask people
Like,
the
tell me about that trauma you went through when you were 9 years old.
yeah, exactly. And you want them to do it on a national news station,
Yeah.
and you want them to share it with the world. And so just making people feel safe is, I'm sure, just a deep energetic thing that you've had to learn going through the journey, where you're able to allow people to open up and share those most difficult times. So that's a skill set that I'm sure putting it into words would be difficult sometimes, but it's just following your gut and knowing the right things to ask, the right questions to ask. I know sometimes too, that's been like a superpower of mine, is just like when I'll be speaking to someone, I'll ask a question where I don't know where it came from, but it's just following that thread and just pulling on it in a very gentle way, and then letting somebody like unfold and share their story.
Totally. It's like what you were saying. It's about being present. It's about
Yeah.
being grounded in the moment. And I truly believe, when it comes down to it, it's also, simply put, and it might sound cliche, but if love is your intention, you want that person to be comfortable because you truly care for them as if they're your neighbor. Like, look, I'm not here to make you look bad on TV. I want you to share your perspective. And when love is truly the root of what you're doing, they can feel it, and something comes out of them that disarms them. Love can disarm a person if you have the right intentions, if you have just like no agenda, and in life, we're all going to have our agendas. We have our jobs, we have things, we have goals, but like just taking things for what they are in the moment and being a little, just being free in the moment, driven by love, not by the fear.
No, I agree entirely. There's a guy that I follow named Peter Crone. You'd love him a lot. He's freaking awesome. And he talks about the goal of life is that we all want to be in love, not in love with another person, but to be in a state of love. Because if you're coming from a state of love and your true intention is just to love others, to have them love you, and just to spread that love, then that's really what we're shooting for. And so coming from that place of actually just wanting the best for them, genuinely wanting to hear them story, allowing them to share, to help heal others, these are all being in the state of love, because you're really just trying to do something from a genuine state of point. So I agree with you 100%, and I think that is the goal, and that's really what we should be striving for. So yeah, so I'm resonating with a lot of the stuff that you've been through on your own personal journey. It's stuff that I've come to on my own conclusions too. So it's nice to hear it from the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's allowing someone to be seen. Like even you saying, hey, Loureen, like, let's chat. Let's have this conversation. You're uplifting me to feel seen. Like you want to hear my feelings, and there's a genuine love connection there. Like I see you, I hear you. You're worthy of being heard.
Yeah.
And so I think even when you're doing that, whether it's a media interview, a breaking news thing, a podcast dialogue situation, giving people space to be heard is really sacred.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be validated, and it's also okay to want all those things, because we are social beings, right? And so it's a survival instinct that's literally rooted in your core, where you want to be accepted by others. And this was something I struggled with for a long time. So I'm like, why do I want to please others? And I thought there was something wrong with me, because that's like was so important to me. But it's literally important for you to fit in and feel part of the tribe, because that's part of you feeling like you're going to survive, like you're going to make it. Because the more you're accepted by others, the more you feel secure about yourself. So it's a completely natural thing to want to impress others and to make them feel good, but not to do it at the detriment of sacrificing who you are as a person.
Right.
So it's doing it also with individuals that are going to treat you and receive you when you're being the genuine version of yourself, and not pushing you down and making you be someone that you're not. So that's also part of the journey too, but it's perfectly natural to want to be accepted by others, and to be validated, and to be loved, and to be lifted up, and want to be happy. Like all of these things are just part of that journey too.
Heck yeah, we're created for community. We're created to connect, and it's a real thing. And, I've always felt that with you, JoJo, even back in the day when we used to work together. We did used to work together. Remember those days? Should we talk about that?
We can talk about it, yeah. We can talk about it. We worked
Top salesman at Armani, right here, this guy.
Oh, man, what an experience. Armani Exchange, South Coast Plaza.
Good times.
We were, like 18, 19 years old at that time. I got hit on so much by dudes. Let's be clear about this. A lot of getting hit on by dudes, and nothing wrong with that. I definitely was part of my sales pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. You
And
pulled them all. The
yeah.
ladies, the gentlemen.
Yeah, it was
That's
just
why
like,
he was the top
yeah,
salesman.
it was, I mean, it's good. Oh, yeah, so that was an experience, definitely. My
But you
mom,
even had that passion and ambition back then, and
yeah,
that's why I'm not surprised seeing you doing what you're doing today so well as an attorney, as one who is just upholds excellence with all that you do.
yeah,
I see that and I respect that. I just want you to
thank
know
you.
that because, anyone could just have their job, make their money, and that's that. But you are intentional with your excellence, intentional with your messaging, and even your generosity. Like,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. I'm sure your parents raised you that way. Bravo, mama and baba.
Bravo, John and Mary, good work.
Yes,
Yeah,
but it's
happy
a part of
birthday,
who
Mom.
you are, Yeah,
Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah, and I really, really appreciate that because, yeah, that's been part of my journey and like almost like the missing piece that I was like not connecting recently. And I heard this speaker recently, his name's Mateus De Stefano, and it's exactly what you talked about. It's intention, right? So you break it down to the Latin root. What does intention mean? To be in constant tension. And so what does that mean? And so you're thinking about it. And so when it comes to being an intention, it's about what you think, what you feel, and what you do, all pulling equally. And if one of them's pulling harder than another or putting less than another, you're not living in intention. But when you pull each equally across the board, everything in your life manifests and you're able to live this excellent life. And so for me, it's just making sure and staying in check with myself that the way I wake up, the way I breathe, the mantras in the morning, my gratitudes, working out, eating healthy, am I doing everything in equal tension and then pulling basically this life that I'm asking for into my scope and getting what I want. So,
Right, right.
and I appreciate that recognition because, yeah, that's been my journey in the last year is making sure I'm doing all three equally.
Yeah, I love it. And
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah, thanks.
They say gratitude is the foundational recipe for miracles. And
Yeah.
I really continue to believe that because as long as you have a grateful heart,
Yeah.
good things will continue to unfold. And
Yeah.
they could be small good things or big good things.
Yeah, what
but
you
they're
think
good
about.
things.
Yeah, what you think about, you bring about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very real. Yeah, I was at one of my networking groups that I have with a bunch of attorneys. I always ask a question every single time we have a meeting. And Zev was there for this most recent one where it was like Thanksgiving around that time. And I asked everyone, what are you grateful for? And I was thinking about the question while I was driving there. And for me, this year, I am grateful for my failures, my mistakes, and all the things I've done wrong in my life because those are the reasons that I am who I am today. And every time I've messed something up has been a lesson or growth or just something that I've just like changed as an individual. And so for me, that's been my greatest thank yous. And I don't think I got to the point of being able to be thankful for those things till this year because I finally realized that's where all the growth was. Yeah.
Do you feel like your world travels helped with that as well?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that for anybody looking to grow, that's the cheat code. Go somewhere where no one knows you, where you're completely alone, where you have no friends, no support system, and figure out who you are.
Right.
Those are the real cheat codes. And it's funny, I was having dinner last night and I was telling them, they were like, well, what was that like? I'm like, how do I describe 7 different kinds of depression? Like, just like not knowing who I am, trying to figure it out.
Every hour, the mood changes.
Yeah, feeling alone, sometimes feeling great. If I
Yeah.
have pizza, maybe I'll feel
Yeah.
better, but just like,
Then you crash from the gluten.
Yeah.
But the gluten's not as bad out there. At
no,
least.
it's not as bad. It's actually fine. You can
Yeah.
have a bunch of bread and
Yeah.
you'll still survive. I called it carbicide. I thought I was going to get super fat,
Yeah.
but no, I actually lost weight. It's
You lose
crazy.
weight out there.
Yeah, it's crazy because
You
you're also
move.
walking, you're enjoying. Yeah, so, but no, going and being alone and traveling is the greatest cheat codes to figuring out who you are as a person. And I think that the greatest journey in life is the journey within. And sometimes the journey within, to have that true journey, you have to go to the journey without, which is without other people around you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you have time with yourself, time with your creator, and time with strangers,
Yeah.
Because I think it's such a beautiful thing that you encounter when it's like someone you don't know. There's no you're not performing. Nobody
Yeah.
knows you. They don't know you and you don't know them. And so
Yeah.
there's just such a fresh slate of just freedom to
Yeah.
find yourself
Yeah.
and others. So
Yeah, it's an opportunity to really learn who you are and also to see how you're going to affect others when there's no expectations on you. It's a whole new way of learning.
and eat good pizza.
Any really
The
good pizza.
OG pizza.
The OG pizza, yeah, for sure. You know, I was born on National Pizza Day.
Oh, wow.
This is why I'm so lovable.
This makes total sense. Now I get it.
Yeah, this is it.
Oh,
But
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask you this question. Who are the 3 coolest people you've had the opportunity to interview or to basically do journalism on, and why are they so cool?
Oh, man. I hate when people ask me to limit things because everything to me
You
has
can
a
talk
special
about 3,
moment.
4, 5. I got no limitations,
Yeah.
but I just figured there's got to be a couple that stand out the most.
I'm going to see what just instinctually comes to
Yeah.
me because every moment is special. It's hard to like measure.
Yeah.
But let's see here. Well, let me think back. Okay, here's one that stood out. So in New York, there was a shooting on the Brooklyn subway. And the guy ran away. Police couldn't catch him. And ironically, this Arab kid on the streets of New York found him. He was a security guy. He was installing a security camera, and he saw the shooter running. And there was actually an award for anyone who would find that shooter. This kid found him, and because he was originally from Syria, and he had endured a lot of trauma, dealing with ISIS and just a whole lot of war chaos, he came to the States with this hypervigilance, gratitude for being in a safe country, but constant hypervigilance. So of all people, it was this Arab immigrant guy that found the Brooklyn shooter.
Okay.
And everyone in New York hailed this guy as a hero. And he was just this sweetheart with this heavy Arabic accent all over the news. Like, it was me. I found the guy. But it was like, and shout out to Zach because he's such an amazing soul. This guy, when I was just seeing him on these different interviews, I was like, oh man, I know this human has such a deeper story than just what they're seeing. Is like, he's the guy that found the shooter. So I actually traveled to New York just to tell his story. And I learned more about his background, about what he witnessed in Syria and why he had this hypervigilance that inspired him to not only have gratitude to live in the US, but to, constantly just be on alert.
Yeah.
And that was a gift to the city because the fact that he was so alert allowed him to contribute something positively to the city. And I just found it to be so ironic, in a post 9/11 world where Arabs were often villainized in New York and internationally. We stand here today and we see a guy just a human guy that did something beautiful for his community. And his backstory inspired me. He's gone through so much. And he was one person that I was like, man, you are not just a hero for the city, but people like you really inspire all of us to don't judge a book by its cover. And you just never know what someone can contribute. Unlikely contributors in society. So that was one of them. Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting too how you talk about the vigilance, and people don't understand the level of trauma that he had to go through to literally just be in a constant state of vigilance all the time. He's always aware. He's always paying attention. He's always going to be, seeing his surroundings, and it's literally what he's been through his entire life. And now, even though his nervous system might be a little bit more regulated being in the US, that's something that doesn't just go away. He doesn't just feel safe.
Right.
He still is going to be in a state of paying attention to all the details, so he knows where's an exit, where to run to, where to hide, or how to get to a safe place. And so that is something that his trauma became a superpower.
Right.
That's an example of a moment like that where it could have been something that could have crushed him, made him crazy, maybe go through PTSD, not be psychologically or emotionally there, but instead he was able to use it for the benefit of others.
100%. There's actually a scripture that says, God makes all things work together for his good. So even the things that appear really not good, horrible, like, why would this happen to me, God? Somehow those are the things that can be channeled for the good if we let it.
Yeah.
And so someone like him, to me, was like the ultimate example of resilience and just like perseverance. So 100%, I think.
Yeah.
Very inspiring.
Yeah, even earlier when you said the 9/11 thing about being Arab, I kind of laughed a little. It's not funny though. And that was something that, I was just like reflecting on that. I remember being in eighth grade at that time, and literally my parents like being so scared because like, we're both Christian. We were raised Christian,
Mm-hmm.
Catholic, and like we're not Muslim. But like it's just at that time, all Arabs were, the way that I felt is that all Arabs were considered terrorists at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so even I remember our parents being so scared, which is like, it's not the right approach, but they just wanted to protect us. Like when people, they would say, if people ask you, say you're Spanish,
Yeah.
say you're Mexican, because literally the racism was so intense and it
Why do
was
you
so,
think mi español es muy bueno?
yeah, right. But it's like we shouldn't have to hide, but also
Right.
just things that happen in the world, right? A small population and small group can affect the judgments of everyone. And so, I guess I bring this up because it's just my recommendation is to always learn for yourself and to look into things. And just because a couple people from a race, a religion, or some sort of culture act a certain way doesn't mean everyone in that culture is that way. And
Right.
so it's up to you to be able to decipher the difference and not just be told how to feel or how to act. And it's just a recommendation because, the fear that I felt as a child, I'm California, eighth grade, going to a private Catholic school, and still the fear that I had getting called a terrorist by my schoolmates, being looked at badly, getting called Muslim when I'm going to a Catholic school with people. Like it was just
Right.
this weird,
And by the
dynamic.
way, how sad that like that
Yeah.
would even be considered an insult. Oh, you're Muslim, because that became the narrative. When the
Yeah.
reality is, we know the average Muslim is not an extremist, and this is
No.
a big reason why I even got into media, because
Yeah.
it's like that narrative was so strong
Yeah.
that not only was I feeling for my Muslim brothers and sisters, my Arab brothers and sisters, even my Jewish brothers and
Yeah.
sisters. There's stereotypes across the board,
Yeah.
and it's honestly it's heartbreaking when that translates into a violent hate crime. It's
Yeah.
one thing when we make our jokes. I love my cultural humor.
Yeah.
It is what
For
it is.
sure.
I enjoy my cultural humor.
Yeah.
But there's a line, and when it gets to the level of where it evolves into an actual moment of violence, it's heartbreaking. And so that's why
Yeah.
the stories we tell are so important, to humanize every side of the token. And I know what it feels like, man. I grew up similar to you,
Yeah.
Arab American Christian. I went to a Christian high school, and I remember it was that post 9/11 world, and I had family and friends, or I had friends rather. I don't even know if you want to call them friends, but I would have folks approach me and say things like, so when did you convert to Christianity? I'm like, when did you convert to Christianity? Because if we take it real back, let's look at the history here. Where's Jesus from? Oh, right next door.
Yeah, right? That's hilarious.
So,
Oh my God.
just the irony of it all. I'm just like, man. And this, again, it's back to media, because the media, we got to provide more balanced perspectives on things. Oftentimes people just don't know. I'm like, I saw that funny meme that said, it's Jesus of Nazareth, not Jesus of New Jersey. Come on, get it right. And it's like, there's
God,
just,
that's so
it's
funny.
silly, and most people, like, I'm so thankful that I never grew resentment towards those folks, because the truth is, they're just a victim of ignorance.
just
It's
don't
not
know.
like
Yeah.
they just don't know better, and it's
No.
not their fault, because especially at that time, you turn on the TV, you're not seeing much
Yeah.
else. So,
Yeah.
it's tough what happened to our community at that time, and some things still take a long time to heal, as we can see. But hoping and praying that the beauty of this nation is our diversity, and that we always embrace that.
Yeah. And I really resonate with they just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's also the more I learn, which I spend most of my time learning all the time, the more I just realize how little people know, and especially how little I know.
Yeah.
And the more I realize how little I know, I feel like the wiser I become,
Right.
because I don't try to talk or have an opinion about things that I don't know. And it's just like I feel almost like sad a lot of times for our generation, because we have access to more knowledge than we've ever had before. And I feel like less and less people are actually accessing that information in a positive and effective way when it's at their fingertips.
Right.
And it's like there's so much, if you're willing to dive down and spend more than 3 seconds on a clip, you know what I mean? Like just dive into a topic, learn. There's just so much out there. And so, yeah. But most people just don't know. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Then you got to give them love and let them figure it out on their own.
And continue forward with our purposes, which is to continue to share that love, that tolerance, and bridge the gap with a little education where they may not have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That was a great tangent. And let's get back to who is the second.
Oh man. Okay. So we got Zach.
We got Zach. Shout out to Zach.
Shout out to Zachy Zach. Man, another one that was, a memorable moment. I had to sit down with Larry King.
No shit.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, and it was a long sit down. It wasn't a quick one. We talked about his life story, me and Larry King.
So
And
you interviewed him?
I interviewed Larry King, the king of interviews. Yeah, which was wild.
I'm
and,
like, my whole body's like vibrating at the thought of that. Like, that man probably gave you so many downloads.
Oh,
like,
so
I
many.
couldn't even imagine. His brain is probably like this big.
Oh, he's
like,
got so many stories.
Dude,
When you're asking
wild.
me about my favorite interview, I asked him, and he's like, "Well, I interviewed Omar Gaddafi," and just so many epic
Dude.
dictators and heroes.
Yeah. Shit.
Yeah, that was wild and such an honor. So I had interviewed him. It was with my production company, The Global Human.
Yeah.
It was Immigrant
Yeah.
Heritage
What is the Global
Month.
Human? Tell us about that first.
Yeah,
And then go
so
into this. Sorry, I didn't mean
Very
to sidetrack
briefly.
you.
No worries. Very briefly, it's a digital online platform that celebrates stories that bring people together.
Yeah.
Just like I mentioned to you, we grew up in a world where there wasn't a lot of that kind of cultural diversity present over the airwaves. And so I wanted to bridge the gap and share stories about unique cultural angles and perspectives that you don't always see. One of them was actually Larry King, and it was Immigrant Heritage Month. And I wanted to talk about the fact that he was a first-generation American. He grew up with a lot of the immigrant things that we grew up with that you wouldn't think as like a Jewish American guy, because we often kind of like put it in a box like, oh, they're not as culturally different as we are. But he went through it.
Yeah.
And so to a point that he changed his last name. His last name's not really King.
I figured. That's funny. I was literally going to ask you that question.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah. I think it was Zyger. Hopefully I got that right. But
What a good
it was,
choice of a name, though.
yeah, he went for it.
He
That
went
power
for
of a name. Let's
Yeah,
remember
power of a
that.
name, yeah.
And
real.
yeah, he was like, back then people just couldn't handle like a foreign name. So he had to simplify it. So he dealt with that. He also dealt with, so many things. His parents had accents and he grew up in Brooklyn. And so he just shared with me what it was like to find his own identity in a world as a first generation American. And
Was it hard to get him on the show, or did you just reach out and were they easy to work with?
Luckily, I knew some folks on his team. And so I think the pitch was worthwhile. The fact that it was Immigrant Heritage Month. It was just a unique perspective. And I think tips for any storytellers, don't go in just like, hey, you're famous, let me talk to you.
Yeah.
How about give me some purpose?
Yeah, what do I want to talk about?
What do we actually want to talk about? What are we tackling
Yeah.
here? So with that,
Yeah.
it was a beautiful conversation just about his upbringing. And then, of course, he talked about big moments in his career.
Yeah.
And it was special because,
This is a really great tip. 'Cause
Yeah.
Like right now for me, I was at the point where I wanted to start reaching out to some other people, and it's not just reaching out to them because they're famous. That's obviously part of it because I want to share the story, but it's like coming to them with what the purpose of the conversation is and who is it going to reach, how is it going to help people,
Right.
and giving them, a why behind the conversation, not just what I
Yes.
want, but why do I want it?
yes. The why will make you fly because it has purpose. It has.
I'm taking that. I'm taking that.
Listen, you can do
The
a
why
recap
will
of
make
all
you
my
fly.
dad jokes today.
This is really good.
We're
No.
just getting started.
Yeah.
But
Why will make you fly?
yes,
Thanks.
purpose,
Yeah.
man. And so
Purpose and intention. It's everything.
truly, and so
Please write that one down for me. Thank you.
That being said, he discussed some big moments for him in his career and how like he would, regardless of someone's background, even if he's interviewing a dictator, he's like, even Osama bin Laden at one point, I'm sure he wasn't born evil, everyone.
But it's
has-
also a perspective that he is evil.
Right. And so even this idea of like digging deep enough to recognize how and why someone got to become the way they are, you know? There's a reason for everything.
Dude, it's such a interesting thought that I have. Obviously Hitler's like the extreme example of stuff, but
Right.
I bet Hitler believed he was doing good, and he truly believed that down in his soul, right? And I don't know if he thought that he was evil with the things he was doing, which obviously I'm not condoning anything he did. Let's be clear
Right,
about that.
right.
But it's just like everybody has their opinions, they have their beliefs, and at some point in their journey, there's a shift, maybe where they do go evil, or maybe they do decide to make different decisions. And I could only imagine being in like Larry King's position. Like he interviewed people at their prime when they were like at wherever they were the most liked, and then he also get to watch people change from when he got to interview them. So I'm sure that was a painful journey for him sometimes too, because maybe he made friends with these individuals and then they end up going down a road that's not so acceptable to the rest of the world.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was such an off the cuff kind of guy,
Yeah.
and I remember one of his interviews with Jerry Seinfeld actually.
Yeah. I love Jerry Seinfeld.
Larry just went in, and he said this. He doesn't like to do too much research
Yeah.
before he interviews someone because he just likes it to flow naturally, and he doesn't like it to be scripted. Well, Jerry called him out on that because he was like, "Did you even watch my show? Did you even know what we were talking about?" And Larry was like, "Is this upsetting you? You look triggered." But it's just, like that was his style,
Yeah.
and it's what made so many people kind of tune in with him because there was just such a realness about him.
Yeah, because some people have asked me for questions before they come, and like I sent you that like jot
General.
form, but I haven't asked you really any of those questions. You
yeah.
know, it's just like to give you a sense and idea of like maybe some topics and things that I'm going to speak about, but I don't like to have a plan.
Right.
I just like, I had 3 notes about the conversation with you today, which were just like, I wanted to know how controlled you were when you get a chance to speak and like how much it just has to be like that. I wanted to talk about your history and what led you down this road, and then I wanted to speak about the top 3 people that you interviewed. Those were the 3 things that really, I didn't know how we were going to get there, but I
Yeah.
knew those were things that I wanted to make sure were covered today. And it's more just like a general outline, but also not everyone is so great at conversation. And that's something to elaborate on also. And
Yeah.
so sometimes people do need a plan and they need to follow a structure because for them, that's the way that they're going to be able to get where they want to go.
Right,
But I
right.
think I really resonate with Larry and just you got to see where the conversation develops and where it leads because it feels nicer and it feels more natural.
Right.
And people can follow the thread and you'll see where it's going to lead you and you can feel it pulling, and then sometimes you'll just get to the end of a thread and then you can go on a new thread. But if you don't allow that thread to fully unfurl, you're never going to see where it goes. And where it
100%.
goes might be the whole conversation in itself, and you didn't even know you needed to have that conversation.
100%. The nonlinear path can sometimes be the more magical one.
Yeah.
If you just let loose a little bit, see where it takes you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See what untethers and what it's so cool. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I know. He's awesome. And it was pretty soon before he passed, so I felt very privileged
Give me a
to.
clip of that. I'm
Yes,
so jealous.
so jealous. Make a remix.
Yeah. But that's cool. I mean, there's not many people on this planet where I would be like, holy shit, I'm interviewing this person.
Yeah.
But like interviewing someone who is the interview of interviewers, right? Like that would be a wild experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you feel the weight and gravitas of that moment when you had him on your show, or did you feel just more comfortable and natural?
I thought I would feel like so much tension, like it's Larry King. But I think, and this is how sometimes you're walking in your purpose,
Yeah.
or what you're meant to do on earth. It felt so natural for me.
Yeah.
I'm a question asker. I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pull something out of you. I just, I have my curiosity and I want you to share your journey with us. So somehow, not to say I didn't have nerves, of course, and
Yeah.
you channel those nerves
But
in a
that's
healthy
good.
way.
Being nervous is healthy, and it
100%.
makes you so much better at what you're gonna do.
Totally. If I'm
love being
flat and I
nervous,
got
yeah.
nothing,
I'm like-
I feel bad for the interview because
Yeah.
then we're not going to have that magical energy there,
No, you need that
Yeah,
floating, just
that
like
frequency.
vibration. That's like, ooh, what's gonna
Yes.
happen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was beautiful. We even sang some Frank Sinatra together, which was awesome because I love my Frank Sinatra, and that was definitely his favorite artist. So, yeah, beautiful moment in history, definitely for the books. And rest in peace, Larry. You were an inspiration.
How legendary.
Yeah, truly.
Legendary.
Indeed. Legend Larry.
Yeah, legendary. Yeah, that's where I was
Ba-da-dum.
going with. Yeah. Oh man. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I got to hit you with another one, huh?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'm still
to think of
fangirling
some-
over here in my
Yeah,
mind
yeah, you
over
keep
that
thinking about your Larry.
conversation. That's just cool.
You're killing
I'm
me,
sure.
Larry.
Did you feel at that moment that you had like made it in the sense of you'd followed your life purpose, and that at that moment it was a realization that all the hard work you'd put in your whole life that you'd fucking made it when you were interviewing him?
I felt like it was a heavenly confirmation that you're just getting started, girl.
Sick.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. It's like I call it the God nod.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're
Yep.
doing the damn
Yep.
thing. Keep going.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Truly. And
Yeah.
of course, humbled all the way. Continue to be humbled
Yeah.
and grateful for every moment.
Yeah.
That magic, and I think it's so important too, because it's like that same magic can exist if you're interviewing a refugee, a celebrity. It doesn't really matter. But when you have a moment where someone is just showcasing their truest self, to me, that's the win.
Yeah.
Because I just enabled someone to open up and be real and be raw. And that's, I mean, to me, that's such a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whoever you are, if I'm able to be a conduit of that, I'm just so grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, darling. I appreciate you.
You're crushing it. I'm so proud of you. Seriously.
Thank you,
This has
Jojo.
been an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
You just have provided a lot of validations, just thoughts and feelings that I've had in my life too. So just keep up the good work. But yeah, I do want to hear about the third person.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Love your shoes, by the way. Can we have a moment for the shoes? Do we have to lift them up?
Please.
This is
Enjoy.
very wrong in Middle
These
Eastern
are-
culture to
yeah,
show our
this-
feet,
these
but
Yeah, these are Taft boots. I love them. I own 6 pairs of them, and they come with designs, all kinds of stuff. They're Spanish-made boots. They're not Italian. They're
okay.
like $300, but they're worth every penny. And
Muy bien.
I judge shoes and stuff by how many compliments I've gotten them, and so if the amount I spent versus how many compliments I've gotten, at least 300 compliments on these shoes.
wow,
so they're worth it.
there it
Yeah.
is. $1
That's what I'm
for
saying.
each.
One for each compliment. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Wow.
I've actually spent a lot of money on shoes this last year. I have like 30 something pairs of shoes.
Listen,
so I
it
love
paves your
shoes.
path, you know?
Yeah, right. Well, they
Here
say
goes
your
another
feet,
dad joke.
Yeah, your feet are your soul, right? So they're
Yes.
leading you exactly where you want. Your souls don't lie.
Yeah,
they
they
take you
do not.
exactly where you're
Where you're meant to
intending to
go.
go. Yeah. So you should make sure you have some sick shoes to pave the way. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's fun. And for all the guys out there that think girls don't look at your shoes, they look. They check them out every time. Muy
I
importante.
will co-sign that
Yeah.
statement.
Yeah, it's very important. And also just the way, dress the way you want to be addressed. So, sometimes I may wear the most funky shoes because I want to be addressed funky. Sometimes I wear fancy shoes and other times I'll wear a pair of Gucci's. It just depends on how I want to be addressed that day. And
Yeah.
I, a lot of times, either start from the top or start from the bottom and go the
Yes.
opposite direction. And so that kind of depends on my mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've always been a fashionable guy. That's why you did so well at Armani.
Thanks,
You know?
yeah.
You had that inherent sense of fashion,
Yeah.
empowering our guests.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a pair. I used to have a pair pretty similar from Argentina when I was living out there
Yeah.
for a bit. And my gosh, yeah, the
Spaniards.
Spaniards.
See,
They know their stuff.
They
Yes.
do. Yeah.
See,
Spanish and Italians. I mean, they're all cousins at the end of the day. And like, if there's one thing when I went on my journey, it's just realizing how close those cultures are and how similar they are and how they're, you can see it a lot through their art history and how essentially the way that they dominated each other through empires. And, when you dominate each other, you essentially share your culture, you share your religion, you share your genetics, right? And so everyone thinks we're all so separate, but really when you break it down and you get back, a lot of times we have so many similarities because we've been through war together. You've dominated me, I've dominated you, and you've stole my things, I've stolen your things. And then at some point, it's just an intermingled mix. But the Spanish and Italians have a lot of history together.
Totally.
Yeah, because they were. So when you look at empires, right, you have the Roman Empire, and then you have like Napoleon, which would be like a next big one. And then you have the Spanish Empire, which was the last major empire that we ever had. And so the Spanish came in and they basically made a deal with the Medicis at that time. And so the Medicis, when they were running Italy, they made them the dukes of Italy, and they intermingled everything. And so they took so much art, they took so many artists, and they also gave so many artists, and there was this back and forth exchange. And so the Spanish and Italians, a lot of times their style, their history, their art, it was all intermingled because they literally were the same. And they loved the same things because the emperor, which was Charles V, he loved Italian Renaissance art so much.
Yeah.
And so like there was no real degree of separation. So a lot of the classiest and best things from Spain and from Italy are very similar because they influenced each other on a very deep core level when they were probably the most influential in the world at that time.
Right.
So a lot of their core beliefs and the way that they raised, their familiar systems, all that stuff was influenced very deeply by each other.
Mm-hmm. Clearly, that pizza in Italy fed you well because you
Yeah.
are well read on the history
Well
of the region.
educated. Yeah. I spent a lot of my time with tour guides in like each city. I don't know what it is. I love art history.
Yeah.
I think it's just, you can learn about so many cultures and stuff. And I would spend entire days at museums with the head curator or the person who was the lead person, and just for the sake of learning. There was no purpose. I don't have an exam. No one's going to question me on this. I don't even know. There's so much information in here that's just stored that I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's just helped me to understand the world on this very deep level of like just understanding how we're also intermingled. And like you can literally see how empires were run by looking at their art and seeing what was going on at the time, because it will allow you to know what was the freedom level. How were they able to express themselves? Were they shunned? Did the church control it? You
Right.
can literally see their culture by seeing the art of that time. It's wild.
Yes. The art is the window
The art
to
is
the
the window.
truth.
The art is the window to the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could see you having a fashion line one day, Joe. I don't know.
One day.
Maybe one day. I'm just saying. Attorney, podcaster.
I want to do it all.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
And I truly believe in tapping into that. Like
Yeah.
life is short.
Yeah.
Why limit yourself? You
I
know?
agree.
And I think so often in, more traditional career paths, it's tempting to want to stay in a box
Yeah.
and just do what's appropriate, do what's expected. But when you kind of step out of the box and embrace the many layers of who you are, like we were talking about earlier, you can stumble upon a lot of realms of expression that you're like, hey, maybe I can even excel at this more.
Yeah.
So I see you doing that. I keep doing it.
Yeah, I think this actually, we can skip the third person for now. Let's lead into where this is naturally flowing into, which is your art.
Sure.
You are a poet, and you know it, which is good.
I do.
And I have a lot of respect for you, and you've actually been an inspiration to me too, because I used to write a little bit when I was younger, and then like I recently have been part of Aubrey Marcus's Fit for Service, and so there's Caitlin, who is an amazing poet, and she inspired us to start writing poetry again, and I started writing poetry again, and when I feel compelled, or when I feel inspired is a better word, to write it and to just follow that thread and go through. And even recently at my buddy's memorial, I read a poem that I wrote about his life, and I shared it with everybody, and it was so well received. And it was just and even writing poetry is a process. Like you can process trauma through it, you can process happiness, you can just feel whatever you need to feel. And so for me, like just tapping into those emotional depths, which I've kind of like almost shunned away because I'm like, I'm not a poet, that's not my thing. But we're all poets. We all have it in us. It's just up to us to allow that expression to flow through. And so I guess for you, tell us about your journey with poetry, what you're trying to do with it, or how you're trying to inspire with it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm hesitant on that, but just what is your journey with poetry, and can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for, sharing that. I'm touched if in any way I've been able to inspire that. It humbles me so much, and I'm grateful. So thank you for sharing that with me. I started in the world of poetry just as a kid, like Dear Diary. Like I had a journal, and my journal entries were either poems or prayers. And that evolved into poetry the more I just observed the chaos of the world around me. And so I want to say, so I've always done like spoken word style poetry, like even pre-media stuff, but it started to blend together like broadcasting news style poems when I was covering the Southern California wildfires. And it would just be such heavy stuff day to day that we'd be covering, that the only way I knew how to unwind after a tough day of heavy news coverage was to go back to my roots, which was just writing and poetry. And so one of my poems that I wrote called A Refugee Crisis likened the environmental evacuees to a refugee crisis like we see around the world. People fleeing their homes, people desperate for resources. I mean, that's literally what it looked like, a refugee crisis. And so I wrote something like that. And my news director at the time was like, whoa, did you write that? Because I had just posted it on Instagram, just shared my feelings, went to bed, another day of work tomorrow, let's go. And then it was
Natural.
yeah, by God's grace, that writing it's, I don't know how to like give it a science necessarily. I think it was just years of me being so used to expressing my feel. Maybe it's like, you don't feel understood by the world. So you write and you feel understood between your paper and your pen, And that's where maybe that experience with words and language started to develop. And then rhythmically, maybe that just came with me having more of a flavorful ear. I don't know really how to describe that, but definitely it's from years of just doing it.
Yeah, it's a
from the soul.
culmination of all your experiences, essentially, from years and thousands of experiences, and allowing others to express themselves, you expressing yourself, also being able to feel not just your emotions, but other people's emotions, and then being able to disseminate that into written word, where you literally spend your entire time and days working with written word. And so it's just a combination of your mastery, and we're seeing it expressed in written form.
Well, thank you. Yeah. That's one way to describe it. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Yeah. And I think, naturally, if you are an empath, which I definitely am, you're able to dig deeper into certain emotional moments that maybe the average person might see it, feel something, move on. But when you're an empath, like you kind of carry that. So for me, carrying that is not an option. I have to like let it out. Like there's a little weight there. So I'm like, I have to channel it somehow. Otherwise I'm just going to be carrying this as an empath.
No, that you're so intuitively correct. Because if you don't channel it and you don't let it out, you're basically traumatizing yourself. That's like how I feel, at least. Like, you ever like been with somebody and they're not letting you express something, and then you literally feel that energy go into your stomach and make you sick?
And you're just carrying it.
Yeah, that's it. And then guess what? Until you release that, however you're going to release it, you can journal, you can work out, whatever that expression looks like, you need to release that. Otherwise, that energy is physically stored in your body as trauma.
100%.
Yeah.
And we're not meant to carry these burdens and these loads. Like, so these are gifts, these realms of expression, whether it's working out, dancing, poetry, whatever it is. This is why I'm such a
They're all art.
advocate for the arts, because it's healing for mankind.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, the writing thing.
Yeah, but this is like, it's a natural thing where you can see it in the simplest form, like just animals, like they shake when things need to be released, right?
Yeah.
And like, it's like you can express it anyway. And a lot of people think like art has to look and feel a specific way, but sometimes it's just a transfer of energy, and getting that energy moving is important no matter how that looks.
100%. They even say, like, when you're dealing with grief requires movement. If you don't push it or move it somewhere, it just builds up, and then you're not healing at all.
Yeah.
So movement is necessary, whether it's negative emotions, positive emotions. If you move it well, it translates well, I think.
Yeah.
So so I had written that, and then my producer was like, oh my goodness, that's so wonderful, let's get that on the airwaves, can you produce a piece on it? I was like, really? I had done video style poetry before. I just didn't know it would necessarily work in the news world.
Yeah.
But it did, and it was super well received. I mean, we were getting emails left and right to our news station about like, oh my God, can you re-air that poem again? We saw that. It was powerful.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, one, super humbling that there was recognition for something that I just so genuinely love to do, and that just came from such a pure place. But two, it empowered me and opened my eyes to like, hey, don't be so scared to share this side of yourself. Because I'll be real, I definitely was scared to share that side of myself. Like, who do you think you are? Come on, you're not that artsy. Like, I had to battle these thoughts, especially coming from, again, that conservative cultural barrier where you're like, oh, I just have to do what's formally correct. Well, I pushed past that, and I was like, this is another side of me. It's a gift that came divinely to me. So I'm not going to be selfish. I'm going to share this however it makes sense in each moment. And so that ended up becoming, to a point where I've won awards for certain poems. I did a big one for Kobe Bryant's passing. And I'm just so grateful to express things that touch people in a positive way. I mean, I'm honored.
Yeah. And that journey and that struggle that you felt of like, am I doing this for like recognition, or am I doing it for like feeling a certain way? And I think that's part of the journey when you're really learning to listen to your intuition and getting back to your passion and purpose and why you're doing things. And then at some point you start to realize that you can just feel your true intention happening at every moment, and then you don't have this struggle all the time, and then it just starts to naturally flow. But I think that's anytime you're learning to express your art, that is a part of it. And I think you're trying to figure out, why am I doing this? What is the reason am I doing this? Am I doing it to impress others for validation, or am I doing it because this is just a true and honest expression of who I am and what I'm trying to share with the world?
100%. 100%. I think that's where it has to start.
Yeah.
It has to be an authentic expression of who you are. Otherwise, again, if you're doing it for views or likes or validation, that will always fail you. You know,
Yeah.
it's never going to be enough.
Yeah.
But for me, I will say, one, it's for me. It's a sense of healing for me.
Yeah.
It's a sense of my own expression. Also, even if it does touch one person, I'm grateful, because if I can extend any sense of inspiration or positivity, it doesn't have to be a million people. Literally, if it's one person, to me, I'm like, wow, what an honor.
Yeah, they had the pleasure of going through that, being part of my journey recently, because I just wanted it for the likes and the follows and for having more people follow me, basically. And then I interviewed the CEO of the Los Angeles Tribune, and he's all like, Joe, as long as one person listens and it changes their life, that's all that matters. And reframing that for me was huge, and just understanding that it doesn't matter about how many people you impact, but about the level of impact that you have. And just understanding that as long as one person hears it and they love it and it changes them and it inspires them, that's all that really matters. And so you already have that mindset. So bravo to you. My hat off to you. Proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a big transition, and I think also that's probably why it's received so well by others, because they can feel that true intention.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You never know. When one person is touched, they could change the world.
Yeah.
So it's like never underestimating the value of one soul. And it comes back to that space of love. Like,
It takes one person to change the world.
yes, truly.
Yeah.
I could go back to another interview example if you'd like. Can you hit me with like a category? Because there's so many different spaces I could pull
Why
from.
don't you hit me with a category?
I mean, I could tell you about, we're talking about art. I did.
Yeah, we don't have to go back to a third interview. It's also, if it doesn't feel natural to go back there, we can talk about anything we want.
Thank you, good sir.
Yeah.
What a free-flowing environment.
Free will flowing environment. You know?
I'll give a quick example. I'll make it brief. That way we hit all of them, and if you like it, you like it.
Okay.
I interviewed Frida Kahlo's family.
Oh, no shit. I
Which was-
just went to Mexico City and went to her home.
No way.
And I just did the tour there. So this is,
This is,
why I needed, yeah, this is the thread.
Yes. Truly. So, yeah, it was a very special story.
Wild story. Her life is insane.
I know.
Like literally crazy. Oh my God. I just remember like listening to the story. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how did this woman make it?
Yeah.
Like I would have just given up at so many points. When
Right.
and her, what is her name? The husband,
Diego?
Diego Rodriguez.
Was it Diego?
I think it was Diego.
I'm saying his name.
I hope we don't mess that up. I think it's Diego. But what an asshole.
Yeah.
Sorry
she
for his
really went
family.
through it.
Yeah, she really went through it. Yeah, but they were in love.
They were.
Yeah.
They were. Love make you do some stupid things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, again, what you go through, you can totally grow through if you release those artistic expressions. And she did that. That's why people resonated.
Yeah.
She showed her pain
Yeah.
on, through her paintings. And so, it was a beautiful experience to speak with her family. They had been launching like these immersive experiences, showcasing her artwork in new ways. And so speaking with the direct descendants of Frida Kahlo's family was a trip, because not only is it epic, okay, it's Frida Kahlo, but like it reminded me so much of the power of legacy. Frida's not here anymore, but her family is. And so while her family's doing their own thing with their own lives, they get to uphold proudly and positively the beautiful legacy of their ancestor. And it just had me thinking so much about legacy and like intergenerationally. We so often get so caught up with like, okay, what am I going to do on my time on this earth? But like we're planting seeds, not just in eternity, but for the next generations. And that was such a powerful piece for me, because I realized like, wow, what we do here on this earth on our short time is so important for the legacy that we're going to leave for the next generation, and why it matters to leave a positive one.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it even makes me think about this podcast and thinking about my kids one day. They're going to all hear all these words, which almost makes me a little bit more cautious about my words. But at the same time, just like, this is also just part of my journey and what I'm going to leave behind. And just also thinking of the bravery for all the people out there that do podcasts, that report, that stand in front of a camera, that do things that go on the internet that never leave and never disappear. And it's like, that's part of you leaving your energetic footprint and your legacy in the world. And so, bravo to those who are courageous enough to do it and just, keep on going, and people will see what you're doing and they'll see your art, even if it's just one person.
100%.
Yeah.
Worthwhile.
Yeah. A wild journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there you go. I hit you with your
You hit me
three.
with the
If any
three.
others come to mind, I'll let you know. But
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what a wild journey it's been.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's great to see where you're at as an individual. And I can't imagine some of the journeys and the places that you've traveled to and some of the cool people that you've met. And yeah, also just too, like, just recognizing the amount of work you put in behind the scenes for just like a couple minute or like a couple second story, and just trying to express an emotion or a feeling or an entire just everything in this moment, and what a difficult skill set that must be to like work through, and how hard that must feel, because if I was in your position, part of the reason I like having an hour and a half, 2 hour conversations, I want to go talk about it
You
all.
want to go deep.
Yeah,
You want
I
to have the
don't.
space to
I
do
don't know
it?
what the
Yeah.
fuck I would do with 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds to tell this whole thing in that.
Yes,
I would freak out. My
Yeah.
brain would probably short circuit.
Yeah.
Like, you'd see it on the news and be like, shit, just trying to explode.
Joe?
Yeah, nope, that's
It
it.
seems we've lost him.
But but that's also why that art form just is not for me. But it's amazing that you're able to do that, and so once again, just commendations on that. Yeah,
Appreciate you,
yeah,
man. Nothing's easy. Nothing always comes natural. You just kind of sometimes have to build those muscles to do what you're meant to do. you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, at this point, I know we've been going for a little bit. We could probably wrap up here if we wanted to, or we can go a little bit longer. Is there anything specific you want to ask me about?
Sure, yeah. Man, would love to learn about what made you so ambitious.
I think it's just something I was born with. I think childhood traumas played into it, but I've just always wanted everything since I was a kid. Not in a bad way. I want to share it with everyone, but I just want all the things all the time. And it's just something in my soul that I've just never seen, that like I can have one thing. Why I've just always said to myself, why can't I have everything? Why can't I make all the friends? Why can't I share all the experiences with everybody? And this was even something I was talking about with the last guest. It's like I see everybody as an opportunity for a friend, somebody I can connect with, somebody I can grow with, someone that somebody can teach me something. And it's just something that's been a part of my soul since I was younger. And it's just been this never-ending desire to like chase after everything I want. And like the two people that are some of my biggest inspirations in the world are Leonardo da Vinci and Salvador Dali, because they were two people that most people are like, be good at one thing. They're like, I'm going to be good at everything. And it was just like something that they
That
naturally
Renaissance
did.
energy.
It's the Renaissance people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why like my favorite part of history is that Renaissance time, because I felt like it was this full expression of art, poetry, engineering, science. Everybody was allowed to explore all the things, and people were not being sheltered.
Right.
And so that's like how I've just always felt about myself growing up, is I like everything.
Yeah.
There's really nothing that I don't like. And just like, I think the greatest attribute for any human being is if you are naturally curious about everything, you will have the greatest success in life. And ever since I was a kid, I would see something and I'm just like, how does that work? How do they do that? How do they create that? And that's just how I've always asked so many questions. And so for me, it's this just deep, deep rooted curiosity about everything and everyone around me, because I just feel like that's the greatest gift in life, is learning and being like a philosopher in a way, right? And philosopher, thanks to Matthias de Stefano, was broken down for me, which means philosophe, which is the love of knowledge. And that's like when I feel the happiest, is when I'm learning or just really learning about something new. I double said that, but basically when I'm learning about something new. And so that pursuit gets me the most excited. And then as for the childhood trauma that really played into that, it's because my mom had 14 pregnancies and she lost 11 of us, and she had to give up pretty much she was sick, almost died multiple times. She had so many surgeries. She shouldn't have made it. She made it, thank God, and because of all the trauma and all the loss that she had, I had to be perfect because she gave up so much and she wanted me to have the best. And so she wanted me to have this perfect life and to be the best. And so because no matter what I did, it was never good enough, I just always was seeking more because I was never good enough. And so combined with this ambition for wanting everything and never being good enough, so I'm always fighting to get higher grades, to do better, to perform better, it just created this perfect storm of wanting everything and wanting to experience everything. And, now I'm at a point where I know I'm good enough. I am proud of myself. I've done the work, but also I never lost that ambition. So I still, like, when most people would be like, like recently I settled a couple of cases, like I settled a $6 million case, settled a $4 million case. A lot of people would sit back on their laurels. I still wake up every day with this fire that, like, I got to crush it harder. I want a $20 million case. I want a $50 million case because I want all the things and I want to share all the things. And I know that for me, the more success and the more stuff that God brings into my life, the more I'm helping other people around me. And like when people ask me, can you invest in my project? Can you help me with this business? Can you give me money for this? Can you assist me with that? I have the unlimited resources to do what I want.
Right.
And I think at some point I do want to run for politics. And I think for me, I'm susceptible, just knowing myself, to maybe a little bit of corruption at this point in my life, just because there's so many distractions and temptations out there. And I want to get so financially secure that no one can shake me.
You can't be bought.
I can't be bought. And so I want to do it for myself, and I want to lock myself into a position where people can't mess with me and shake me and try to influence me. So that's also part of my journey, is I want to get to that point that I've proven it for myself, and then no one can come into my sphere and influence me. Yeah.
Well, I think you're well on your way, Jojo.
Thanks.
And much more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm confident of that. So
Yeah.
very proud of you, my friend.
Thanks. And I guess I ask you the same question. Why do you think you've had such an ambition to do such great things and always fight and to keep, overcoming adversity when probably the road was super hard and you could have just turned around?
I would say because the pain of rising up is worth more than the pain of giving up. And I can't see myself in a world where I'm just complacent or stagnant. I feel like my spirit would die. Like
Yeah.
I'm not meant for that. And so while it's hard, you have to break barriers, you have to deal with pain, rejection, betrayal. I mean, there's professional challenges, there's personal challenges. Everything can hit you all at once that could cause you to just feel like, why am I even pushing forward? But because if I just go backwards, then I'm doing nothing. So I would rather take the pain of rising up than just deal with the pain of giving up.
Yeah. And there's also some beauty in the fact that, like, I used to judge people for just wanting a simple life and not wanting all the things.
Yeah.
But then there was a day where I was sitting there, I was like, shit.
I wish I was like those
I
people.
kind of wish
Yeah.
I just wanted what I wanted
Yeah.
and just was happy.
More content, yeah.
Yeah,
But
you know?
everyone's built differently.
Everyone's
See, like
built
I
differently.
do see folks who are, much simpler in terms of like, contentment and like
Yeah.
lifestyle. And man, God bless those people.
God bless
because
them.
They
Yeah.
they have a peace that is
Yeah.
so beautiful
Oh
and
my
so
God.
simple, And
Yeah.
at the same time, you can also be built and wired
Yeah.
differently. And that's okay because you were created in that way.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things that you are meant to do on this earth
Yeah.
that require that kind of shaking.
Yeah.
So everyone has a different path. And you need to be
Yeah.
around those more simpler folks to keep you grounded sometimes,
Yeah.
And vice versa. The more simpler folks need to be around those crazy, wired, ambitious folks to get them to get a little
Yeah.
inspired sometimes. So it's a give and take. Everyone needs each other.
Yeah.
That's why we're all built so different.
Yeah, because like I feel best when my schedule is so busy that I don't have a lot of time in between. Like between my podcast, going to my networking meetings, going to the gym, having my routine in the morning and like all this stuff. And people literally look at my calendars and they're like, you're insane. And I'm like, I feel super at peace. If I have like a gap of time, I'm like, what am I going to do at that time? And of course I'll find something to do, but it's like everyone's wired differently and other, everybody feels at peace in different ways. And so, yeah, it's just recognizing that what makes you happy and what makes me happy are completely different things. And that's perfectly fine.
Right.
And that's okay. Let people be happy the way that they want to be happy. Let people feel loved the way they want to feel loved. It's not your place to judge them. Whatever makes them happy is what really matters.
100%. And we learn from each other at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Everybody in your life teaches you where you're not free. And
Yes.
it's important to have as many relationships as possible so that each person can reflect a place where you might not be free in your life. And also, you can reflect to them where they might not be free and help them grow too.
yeah,
Yeah.
little accountability is always good.
Little accountability is always good. Yeah. And it's always nice too for me when like you have a conversation, you're learning as much from the other person as they're learning for you. Because some conversations, can feel a bit one-sided, but this conversation's been great because there's been a lot of give back and forth. And so, I think part of life's journey is also trying to find the people that really fill your battery the way that you fill them up.
Right.
And hold on to those people because they make you feel great. They'll inspire you and keep them close, because I don't think there's a billion of those people. Maybe there is. I just haven't met them yet. But it's really important to surround yourself by those individuals.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Push one another forward.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. This has been a great conversation. This is going to push me forward for a while. So this is good.
Yay.
And thank you for the question. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank
This
you,
was lovely.
Jojo.
Yeah.
Man, what an honor.
Yeah.
What
this
a
was fun.
honor.
Yeah. I'm going to have to make Kara watch this.
Right?
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to sign off. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Joe.
And
Pleasure to be
thanks
with
for
you.
being here. Love you.
Mwah.
Yep.